I realized I've been overly negative in the last few videos. The thing is, I really like Game of Thrones. I really like A Song of Ice and Fire. I enjoy George's world. I enjoy the characters. It's a great story, and it's in a vivid and epic world. So in this video, instead of nitpicking at little details that I might find to complain about, I want to talk about what truly makes these stories great and what this can teach you about great writing. Welcome to The Edge, where I explore writing, world building, and how to use AI to enhance your creativity. If that sounds like your thing, come on in. You're in the right place. Good storytelling often hinges on compelling characters. These are the individuals who carry your narrative, who breathe life into your world, and who linger in the minds of your readers long after they've turned that final page. But what is it that makes characters truly memorable? How do you create a character that readers will not only follow, but feel deeply connected to? Well, today we're going to explore these questions by looking at some of the most beloved characters from George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. This series is filled with a vast array of characters, each with their own complexities, motivations, and flaws, and a few of them stand out. Tyrion Lannister, Arya Stark, Jaime Lannister, Daenerys Targaryen, and Jon Snow. These are some of the characters that readers not only love, but are also deeply invested in. And these are the characters that people like so much that when the TV show kind of did them dirty, fans were pissed. They lost complete faith in the showrunners and they hated the last two seasons of the show, not because it was the worst TV ever, not because there was no spectacle, no entertainment, no sex, but because the characters the viewers cared about were totally massacred, changed, betrayed, and undermined in that last couple of seasons. And it's because people cared so deeply about these characters that they so viciously and vigorously hated the way the TV series ended. And everybody is crossing their fingers and hoping, number one, that George actually finishes the series, and number two, that he actually does right by these characters people are so invested in. Now, these characters resonate with readers because they're not just heroes or villains. They're multifaceted individuals who embody both light and dark quality. Almost every character has strengths and weaknesses. We see them grow and change. Their motivations are complex and dynamic, and their interactions with other characters and the events in the world constantly reveal new dimensions in their personalities. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down what makes these characters work so well. We'll look at how their moral ambiguity, their relatable flaws, their unexpected growth, and their interpersonal dynamics contribute to their popularity. The goal is to equip you, as a writer, with practical techniques that you can apply to your own character building process so you can also create characters that will captivate your audience and keep them coming back for more. So the first concept to look at is complexity and moral ambiguity. Characters that embody both light and dark qualities engage readers by reflecting real human complexity. One of the key reasons readers are drawn to certain characters is this same complexity, particularly when there's some moral ambiguity involved. Characters who aren't purely good or purely evil, but instead operate within all these shades of gray, they tend to feel more real, more human. They mirror what we see in real life in the world around us, making them not only relatable, but also unpredictable and intriguing. And that's one of the greatest strengths of George's writing. It's his character development. Every single character is morally ambiguous. Every single character makes decisions that are selfish, harmful, immoral, and all the characters, even the most vile and villainous, make choices that are noble, compassionate, and kind. So sometimes, even the worst characters in the story, you find yourself rooting for them because they're not 100% bad. They're not caricatures of evil. They're actually well-developed, well-rounded, well-thought-out people with complex and competing goals in their head. They have internal conflicts that they're trying to manage while they deal with whatever chaos is going on in the world around them. And this makes these characters so much better than what we see in almost all the other books out there. Every person in George's world feels real because every person is painted in varying shades of gray, growing darker as their situations grow more desperate and dire, and growing lighter as they see the needless pain and suffering around them and wish, even for a moment, that they could find a better way. And while almost all the characters in this world are drawn in this vivid and compelling way, I think the one that embodies it perhaps the best is Tyrion Lannister. So let's explore Tyrion for a minute. Tyrion is a prime example of a character whose complexity has won him a legion of fans. On the surface, he's witty, intelligent, and quick with a biting remark. He's someone readers can root for, especially as he's often marginalized and underestimated due to his stature and his family's disdain and the way people view him. However, what truly makes him compelling is this moral ambiguity. He is capable of great kindness and empathy. He's capable of loyalty, but he's also manipulative and cynical and at times focused on power and revenge. This makes him unpredictable. Readers can never entirely be sure what he's going to do next or whether his decisions will lead him down a darker path or on a path to redemption. This unpredictability keeps the readers engaged, constantly questioning his motives and the ultimate direction of his character arc. Fans are drawn to Tyrion because he reflects the complexity of real people. He's not a traditional hero. He's not a traditional villain. He's a survivor. He's someone who uses his wit and his intellect to navigate a world that's often hostile to him. His sharp tongue and moments of vulnerability make him relatable, while his darker traits add depth and tension to his character. There's always that thing just boiling right under the surface with Tyrion. His journey is filled with personal victories and moral dilemmas, making him a character readers admire and empathize with, even when they question his choices. So the takeaway for writers is when building your characters, strive for a balance of strengths and flaws. Don't shy away from giving them darker traits or morally ambiguous motivations. Let your characters make decisions that aren't always clear-cut or morally sound. This complexity will not only make your characters more interesting, but will also allow readers to connect with them on a deeper level because they're going to see reflections of their own moral struggles and complexities within the characters. And some of you might not want to admit this, but we're all morally complex. We all have a dark side. I heard it really well on a comedy show I was watching the other day where Ricky Gervais said, "You don't get to choose what you think. Thoughts are going to pop into your head whether you want them to or not." And really what he was trying to say is the measure of a character isn't whether or not you ever have dark thoughts, whether your thoughts are always pure and perfect. No, his point was when those thoughts come up that are dark impulses, you have a choice. You can follow them, usually into something bad, or you can restrain yourself. And if you're a comedian like Ricky, you can just make a joke out of it and laugh along with everybody else. The point is, people are complex. People have moral complexity, and everybody experiences moral gray areas where they're not 100% sure what to do. Tyrion really encapsulates this. So the second thing to talk about here is relatable flaws and growth for characters. Characters who possess relatable flaws and exhibit growth over time, well, they're the characters readers really get attached to. These characters resonate with readers because they feel real, and one of the best ways to achieve this sense of realism is by giving your characters flaws that the readers can see in themselves and can see in other people around them in the world. But just as important as these flaws is the character's ability to grow and evolve. The character's journey, particularly one that involves overcoming or grappling with their own flaws, can deeply engage readers and keep them really invested in the story. They want to see how it's going to turn out. They want to see if the character can overcome these flaws or whether the flaw is going to lock that character into some kind of a bad path. A Song of Ice and Fire, a good example of this is Arya Stark. She is a character whose flaws and growth make her one of the most beloved characters in the series. Personally, she's one of my favorites. When we first meet Arya, she's headstrong, she's rebellious, she's struggling to fit into this traditional role that is expected of a noblewoman. It doesn't really suit her, and her stubbornness and impulsiveness get her into trouble. But these same traits also fuel her survival instinct when she has to navigate a world that is growing increasingly hostile and dangerous for her. Her journey is marked by her intense desire for vengeance. Now, this becomes both her driving force and her greatest flaw. As she crosses her names off the list, her pursuit of revenge begins to consume her, leading her down a darker and darker path. But this also opens up a whole new path for her to explore when she meets the Faceless Men. However, this very journey also becomes one of growth. Arya learns the skills of survival, hones her identity in a world where she's often forced to conceal it, and confronts the moral implications of her actions. Arya's relatability comes from her determination to stay true to herself in a world that constantly tries to mold her into something else. Fans admire her courage, her independence, her resilience, qualities that many aspire to. But it's Arya's flaws, her vengefulness, and the emotional toll of her quest that make her journey so compelling. Readers are not just watching a hero triumph, they're witnessing the cost of that triumph, the sacrifice she has to make, and how kind of close she slips to a very dark edge. So her evolution from a naive, idealistic girl to a hardened, morally complex figure really resonates with the fans. She embodies the struggle between holding on to one's identity and adapting to survive in a world that demands conformity or death. So things to consider as a writer. When you're creating characters, think about your flaws. What makes them imperfect? And how do those imperfections drive their actions? Consider how these flaws can also lead to growth. A character who starts the story with one set of beliefs and who evolves in response to the challenges they face to a different set of beliefs or questions those core beliefs, that person feels real. They're dynamic. They're mirroring people we see in real life. This growth doesn't have to be entirely positive either. Sometimes the most compelling arcs involve a character grappling with their darker sides, much like Arya, and even a character who descends from a kind of a more noble and moral place, who follows an arc where they become something worse. That's also an interesting and very dramatic story. So allow your characters to change, to be shaped by their experiences, by the events that happen in your story, and allow them to emerge from those experiences transformed. This evolution will sell readers on your work, and it will keep them invested in the journey. So they're going to keep reading to find out what happens next, because that outcome needs to be in question. Once they realize your characters can change, they want to know which way they're going to change and what's going to happen to them. Now let's talk about unpredictability and complexity in a character's motivations. Characters with unpredictable actions and complex motivations maintain reader interest and drive tension within your narrative. Readers are drawn to those characters whose motivations are not immediately clear, whose actions are sometimes unexpected, and whose decisions reflect a deeper, often conflicting set of desires and beliefs. This unpredictability adds layers to the character, and it keeps the readers guessing, creating a more engaging and dynamic story. This is another thing George does extremely well. He paints characters with very ambiguous motivations. You know what they're about, but you don't quite know which way they're going to flip. And this keeps the audience, the readers, on the edge of their seats, because you really don't know from scene to scene what a character will do or how they'll react to a situation. You keep reading to find out what they're going to do next, because you really can't guess the way you can in so many other books. This is amazing writing. So many books have such shallow, one-dimensional characters that you can predict how they're going to respond to almost any situation after reading just a chapter or two. So the story never surprises you, especially books that follow really formulaic plot beats. You know exactly how they're going to turn out. And a lot of readers, especially people who read a lot, they burn through books and they keep seeing the same plots over and over again. They keep seeing characters go on the same arcs and make the same decisions over and over again. But George R.R. Martin, oh my God, in his books, you really never know what's coming. And that makes them wonderful, just a joy to read, especially that first time you're just chewing through those chapters and something crazy happens and you didn't expect it, but it makes total sense and it seems completely inevitable given how he's built it up. Oh, that is just, that is so good. That's what all writers need to strive for. So an example of a character like this in George's work is Jaime Lannister. He's one of the most complex and unpredictable characters in A Song of Ice and Fire. I may have to remove a cat. What you doing, bud? Now, let's see what we can do here. Come on. Hey, what are the chances of you staying still? Jaime Lannister is one of the most complex and unpredictable characters in A Song of Ice and Fire. At the outset, he seems to fit very neatly into the role of the antagonist. A morally corrupt, arrogant knight, a man who is infamous for breaking his oath and murdering a king, earning him the derisive nickname Kingslayer. However, as the story progresses, Jaime's motivations and character begin to reveal themselves as far more nuanced and layered than you think when you first meet him. His initial arrogance and ruthlessness are gradually peeled back to show a man grappling with deep-seated issues of honor, loyalty, and love. His relationship with Cersei and his unexpected bond with Brienne of Tarth and his own internal conflict over his reputation as a dishonorable man, these all add up to this just crazy soup of a personality that is just chaos going on inside of his head. Jaime's torn between his love for Cersei, which drives many of his morally questionable decisions, and his emerging sense of honor, particularly as he grows closer to Brienne and begins to reassess his actions and the consequences of his actions. Jaime's unpredictability is a significant part of his appeal. Just when readers think they have him figured out, he does something that challenges their perceptions, like saving Brienne from death, even at the cost of his own safety, or gradually turning away from the toxic influence of his sister. These actions force readers to reconsider their judgments and keep them invested in Jaime's story. Fans appreciate his redemption arc, not because it turns him into a traditional hero, but because it remains complex and true to his character. His journey isn't about becoming wholly good, but about struggling with the shades of gray that define his life. This internal conflict, defined with his unpredictable decisions, make Jaime a character that readers find endlessly fascinating. I love the crazy directions he's gone in. So, what can you learn from this as a writer? Well, to create characters with depth, consider their motivations, especially those that might be conflicting or not immediately apparent. Let your characters surprise your readers by making choices that challenge expectations, but ensure that those choices remain true to the character's underlying complexities. A character's unpredictability doesn't mean they act randomly, doesn't mean they're crazy. It means they act in ways that reflect their internal struggles, their desires, their beliefs. And these things might not always be clear-cut or straightforward. And they might even have desires or beliefs that are contradictory. People can hold contradictory things in their minds. People do it all the time. Just watch your friends and family. You're going to see some crazy stuff if you really pay attention to what's driving their decisions. So by embracing this complexity in motivations and actions, you can craft characters that keep readers engaged, always wondering what they'll do next. And when they do something odd, always trying to understand why the character did that. So if you have a character do something unexpected, make sure you circle back and show the reader a reason for that behavior. It can't be random. It can't be crazy. It has to be expressed in a way the reader's going to go, aha, and understand. That keeps the reader invested, keeps them reading. And this kind of storytelling, this kind of character development really keeps the tension high and keeps the narrative compelling. And that makes readers really attached to this character's evolving journey. The next topic has to do with interpersonal dynamics. This is how characters interact with each other. How characters interact with others can deepen their development and reveal hidden facets of their personalities. A character does not exist in a vacuum. Their relationships with other characters are essential to their development and often reveal aspects of their personality that might not be visible through internal monologue or solitary action. The way a character navigates friendships, alliances, rivalries, romantic entanglements, these things can provide insight into their motivations, their fears, their desires, and adds depth and complexity to their portrayal. So let's look at Daenerys Targaryen. Her rise from a powerless exile to a formidable queen is one of the central arcs in this series. Much of her development is revealed through her interactions with others, whether they're advisors, enemies, or those she seeks to rule. Each relationship she forms serves as a mirror reflecting her own internal struggles and her ambitions. Daenerys' relationship with her advisors like Sir Jorah Mormont and Tyrion Lannister, these showcase her growth. These showcase her growing understanding of power and leadership. Initially, she leans heavily on Jorah's counsel, seeing him as almost a father figure and a protector. However, as she gains confidence and experience, she begins to question his loyalty, question his judgment, eventually casting him aside when she discovers his betrayal. This moment is pivotal. It reveals Daenerys' capacity for both forgiveness and ruthlessness, depending on how she perceives loyalty and betrayal. Her romantic relationships, particularly with Khal Drogo and later with Daario Naharis, reveal another side of her, a blend of vulnerability and strength. With Drogo, she learns to assert herself, growing from a timid bride to a woman who commands the respect of a fearsome warlord. Her relationship with Daario, however, reflects her struggle between personal desires and the demands of leadership. These interactions highlight the tension between her human emotions and her larger-than-life ambition to reclaim the Iron Throne. Even as she becomes more powerful and more distant from the common people she seeks to liberate, her struggle to balance compassion with authority, love with duty, justice and revenge, these things resonate with readers who see in her a reflection of the true complexity of leadership and power. When you see a leader in our own world, they may be portrayed or cast in a certain way, but when you look at all of the forces they're trying to balance and the kind of things they're having to navigate when they make decisions, you'll quickly see that leadership is not easy. Holding power is not easy, and doing the right thing with that power, even for really good people, even for really intelligent people, is very difficult. And the complex way this is approached in George's books with Daenerys, well, this really shows some of those complexities in a way that is very true to life. These are the kind of decisions people in power really have to make, the kind of compromises people in power really have to make. So Daenerys' interpersonal dynamics also foreshadow the darker aspects of her character arc. Her growing reliance on her own judgment, her willingness to make brutal decisions in the name of justice, and her increasingly strained relationships with those who try to guide her, all of these hint at the eventual unraveling of her character. These interactions build tension and keep readers emotionally invested in her journey, even as they begin to question where it's going to lead. So the takeaway for writers is when you're developing your characters, pay close attention to how they interact with others. Use those relationships to reveal different facets of their personality. And don't make those relationships easy. Make those relationships dynamic, make them fraught with difficult choices and conflict. By doing this, you're going to reveal facets of that character that might not otherwise be apparent. Think about how each relationship affects your character's decisions, their growth, and the way they see the world. Interpersonal dynamics can also be a powerful tool for foreshadowing. The way your characters respond to allies, adversaries, and loved ones, this can hint at future conflicts or transformations. And by weaving all these relationships into your narrative, you create a richer, more nuanced portrayal of your characters, making them more engaging and realistic to your readers. And the last topic is balancing internal and external conflicts. A compelling character arc involves a balance between internal struggles and external challenges, with each of these things influencing and intensifying the other one. Characters become truly memorable when their internal conflicts, their doubts, their fears, their desires, when these are mirrored and magnified by the external challenges they face from the world around them. This interplay between internal and external not only drives the narrative forward, but also deepens the reader's connection to the character as they watch how these forces shape their journey. So let's look at Jon Snow. His character arc is a powerful example of how internal and external conflicts can be intricately linked. From the beginning, Jon is burdened by his identity as a bastard, which fuels his internal struggle with self-worth, belonging, and this overwhelming desire to prove himself. These feelings of inadequacy are central to his character and influence many of his decisions throughout the series. And eventually, Jon faces the harsh reality of the Night's Watch, the looming threat of the White Walkers, and the political machinations that come with his rise in leadership. And each of these external challenges forces Jon to confront his internal conflicts. For instance, his loyalty to the Night's Watch is tested when he learns about his true parentage, which complicates his sense of duty and identity. His relationship with Ygritte further complicates his internal struggle as it forces him to choose between duty and love. And as Jon takes on more leadership roles, his internal doubts clash with the expectations placed on him by others. He must navigate this tension between being a leader and staying true to his principles, often facing impossible choices that test his resolve, that test his character. His decisions are never easy, and the consequences of his actions often lead to further internal turmoil, such as his guilt over the execution of Janos Slynt or his controversial decision to ally with the wildlings. And these facets of his internal conflict and his external conflicts, these really make him a popular character. And this popularity stems from the authenticity of his struggles, who grapples with his own sense of worth and the heavy burden of leadership. Fans relate to this because his conflicts are deeply personal, but at the same time, they're universally resonant. Everyone has experienced moments of doubt like this. Everyone has experienced pressure to meet other people's expectations, and everyone has had to struggle to balance their own personal desires with the responsibilities that are in their life. Moreover, Jon's arc is marked by a series of hard-won lessons where his internal growth is often mirrored by the external outcomes of his decisions. This balance between internal reflection and external action makes his character dynamic and multifaceted, driving the story forward while also providing profound emotional depth to this character. So if you're a writer, when you're crafting your characters, ensure that their internal conflicts are tightly woven with the external challenges they face. Let their internal struggles inform how they respond to external events, and vice versa. This creates a character arc that is both engaging and realistic, as the reader sees how each decision, each mistake, each triumph is rooted in the character's inner world. By balancing the internal and external conflicts, you allow your characters to grow in meaningful ways. Their victories will feel earned. Their failures will resonate more deeply, and their overall journey will be made more compelling by these things. This dynamic interplay between the internal and external will keep readers emotionally invested in these characters, eager to see how they navigate the challenges ahead and how they change, how they evolve throughout your story. As we've explored today, the characters that truly resonate with readers are those who are complex, flawed, and dynamic. They're unpredictable, but always in ways that make sense. They're driven by motivations that are deeply human and shaped by both their internal struggles and external challenges. And whether it's Tyrion's moral ambiguity, Arya's relentless growth, Jaime's unpredictable motivations, Daenerys' complex relationships, or Jon Snow's balance of internal and external conflicts, these characters from A Song of Ice and Fire capture our imaginations because they reflect the intricate, often contradictory nature of real life. And that's the genius of these stories. That's why people love these huge, fat books that take hours and hours to get through. That's why people love the show. In your own writing, strive to create characters who aren't just vehicles for plot or vessels for themes, but who feel like real people, who feel like they have their own agency, who feel complex, who feel deep. And remember that your character's flaws can be just as engaging as their strengths. In fact, I would argue that flaws are almost always more compelling and more interesting than strengths. That's why superhero movies have suddenly flatlined, because they've made them overpowerful. They're not the kind of flawed, insecure, uncertain people that they were during kind of that early growth phase when superhero movies were really catching on. And remember that your own character's growth doesn't have to be linear. They can have ups, they can have downs, they can take a step forward, they can take two steps back. All those things can happen in your stories. Remember that their relationships can reveal hidden dimensions, and let their internal conflicts drive their decisions, and ensure that the external world they inhabit challenges them in ways that are meaningful and transformative. The key takeaway is that character development is not just about what happens to your characters, but how they change, how they react, how they grow as a result of what happens, as a result of the plot. By focusing on these aspects, you'll create characters who not only move your story forward, but will linger in the minds of your readers long after the story ends. So thank you for joining me in this exploration of character building. I hope you're leaving with new insights to bring your own characters to life in richer and more compelling ways. And I hope you've come to appreciate George's writing more, because it is really good. Now get out there and write, you, I don't know, dragon bloods? What's a good way to end this? Now stop twiddling your thumbs like small folk and get out there and write. Get out there and write like you have the blood of the dragon flowing through your veins. I'm sure one of those will work.